My Lords, unconventional times call for unconventional measures. And what are these times? The country is facing the possibility of an exit from the EU without a deal, a disorderly exit that nobody wants. The Prime Minister doesn't want it, business and the CBI don't want it, the TUC doesn't want it, the House of Commons doesn't want it, and your Lordship's House voted against a no-deal exit by a majority of 169. But the eventuality remains a risk, as we're constantly reminded, because the default legal outcome is that, unless something else happens. That legal default, a crash-out no-deal, would mean no transition period, the immediate introduction of tariffs, complete uncertainty for British citizens living in the EU 27, no European arrest warrants, security concerned, dire consequences for industry, to say nothing of the implications for Gibraltar or the island of Ireland. We have received from the House of Commons, and about to give it a first reading, a bill which does make something else happen. It would ensure there is a legal requirement on the Prime Minister to seek an extension to the Article 50 period to prevent that default legal outcome coming to pass. But the bill, passed by the elected House, can only have effect if we deal with it today, so that it can receive royal assent in time for the EU Council to consider the application for an extension. So to fulfil our duty to deal with a bill sent by the Commons, we have to handle it today. My Lords, this is in compliance with the view of your Lordship's House on the 28th of January, when we called on Her Majesty's Government to take all appropriate steps to ensure that sufficient time is provided for this House to ensure the timely passage of legislation necessary to implement any proposition that had commanded the support of the majority of the House of Commons. That was a motion passed in your Lordship's House on the 28th of January with a majority of 152. The Commons has passed this bill. It has expressed a clear view that no deal is unacceptable and that the situation is urgent. Regrettably, the Government failed to honour that motion published by your Lordships. It should have tabled the motion I am about to move to facilitate and expedite the will of the elected House. And now today, the Government still won't listen, either to the Commons or to this House, which has voted to facilitate any bill from the Commons. That, my Lords, is not leadership. The Government has lost the support of the Commons and now refuses to follow your Lordship's motion. No, I'm afraid I am not. I believe the conventions of the House, which the noble Lord used to adhere to, mean that it is my decision whether to give way, and I have decided not to. So we, rather than the Government, had to table this motion, and the motion would allow us to take all stages of the bill today and add it to today's agenda. But, my Lords, it is not just the Government which is failing to respond to the decision of the elected House. We see on the order paper 7 amendments to my motion. All, it has to be said, from peers who've been very open, very honest about either their desire or at least their acceptance of a no-deal departure. However, rather than just vote against my motion, and that is the correct way to halt proceedings if they have the support across the House. No, instead of just voting against it, they've chosen to try and delay the bill so long that it can have no effect, and so thwart the decision of the elected House. Some of those have even, at the very last moment, found themselves in absolute need to speak on a really interesting motion in the name of Lord Forsyth on tax digitalisation for VAT, treating small businesses fairly. The very small businesses, presumably, that wrote to me saying, whatever we want, it's not no deal. But they found themselves, just before 6 o'clock last night, once they knew this motion was going to be here today, suddenly seized of the need to add their names to the speaking list. I do have a list of those who voted, who added at the very last moment, I have to say. So what we are seeing today, in addition to those 7 amendments, and to more people wanting to speak later on to put off the bill, is a small group of unelected peers in an unelected House firstly try and stop us considering the bill today and then trying to talk it out. And no doubt seeking to go through the night to halt the Commons' desire to prevent a no deal. Because, of course, they can't win this by the strength of their arguments. They can't win it by the strength of the support, but only by those tactics. But I and my friends will be here all night. I have discovered that breakfast starts at 7:30 in the morning. So I'm taking orders now, and it'll be ready. Because if that's what it takes to do what the elected House of Commons has asked us to do, that is what we will do. For the moment, I urge the House to respond to the cross-party bill which has arrived here, which was passed with urgency in another place, and in this time of national uncertainty, do what we are appointed here to do, to consider any legislation sent to us in a timely fashion, and we should agree to pass it in time for it to have an effect. I beg to move.
No, sorry.